Alright, listen, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, because you never ever know the video that you suggest, which you can leave in the comment section below right now, that could be next. Now you can follow the Alkebulantrust on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that stuff there. Now listen, this is the last part in the reaction video to, well, as far as this docu-series is concerned, because there might be another one that they're doing. Who knows, in terms of the docu-series, the journey of an African colony. This one is Making of Nigeria. So this is part 7. Yeah, part 7, yeah? But yeah, let's just get straight into it. No long thing. Not gonna try to pause as much, but, we gotta do what we gotta do, right? Alright, so let's go.
The nationalists were coming. Africans took it home. The British having their way was getting more and more difficult. An unlikely battleground was found.
That's such a beautiful place. Look at it.
This was truly an African journey. It was taking a different turn.
Look at the scenery. Like seriously, the scenery. I mean, would you agree that that scenery is beautiful? Like, it's beautiful. In fact, let me say it like this, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful, I'm stuttering. Get me? Alright, so journey of an African colony, the making of Nigeria. No, seriously, it's so beautiful, the sceneries.
This is the chief livelihood in this. The main livelihood in this area now is tippers such as these coming to these kind of tippers coming all the way down into the valley just to get sand to sell for construction.
Again, beautiful scenery, but we saw that before.
Enugu was already a town with a population in excess of 25,000 in 19.
Yeah, see, look. Maybe it's just the Igbo on me that naturally wants to say certain area looks nice, it looks beautiful, innit? You know what I'm saying? But obviously, yeah, like naturally, that's, I don't know how to say. I'm speechless. Like, honestly. Anyway, let's just put off. No, let's keep moving. No, let's rewind it.
The mines were near Enugu. Enugu was already a town with a population in excess of 25,000 in 1949. It had a mix of administrative employees in all sorts of government positions, a mining company, connected families, traders and artisans. Workmen's welfare had been awakened by the nationwide strike in 1945. Of the 2 mines in this area, Eva was not the first, but it quickly became the leading coal mine for the country. From 1916, when coal production increased quickly to 25,000 tons. By 1929, it had risen to over 350,000 tons.
Interesting.
And further in 1944 and 45, to 668,000 tons.
Damn.
Coal production fed the West Coast and still met Nigeria's needs. We're here now in Enugu, in Eva Valley Mines, in the eastern part of the country. We've been through a long and treacherous road down a gully to get to the actual mine. This was
no, did you hear what he said? So if you're a Jamaican watching this, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Do you see the connections? So come on, man. Because look, I'll be like, look, this is just from experience growing up, yeah. And it's interesting how he's in one part of Igbo land. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, and he mentioned the gully and stuff like that. But growing up, personally, I grew up with the foster mother in it, and like she's Jamaican, isn't it? So it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, so, I was blessed with the opportunity to go to Jamaica, and that's the first time I heard of a gully and seen a gully. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it was interesting. It was very, very interesting. And it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not even gonna front until I saw this. I've never necessarily associated the term gully back to back to the motherland and that. I never really associated that term. Like, I'll be real until now. Like, raw. Like, now it kind of makes sense. Unless he is using that term, and like, I don't know. I have to dig deeper, but it kind of makes sense when you look at most Jamaicans or most Caribbeans can trace their ancestry back to being, from many West African regions. Many West African tribes. Yeah, mainly Igbo and you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it kind of makes sense. Yeah. But so, with the language and stuff like that, like, Patois was basically broken English. That's all it really is, really. Like Nigerian Pidgin, that's broken English. So they use certain words and terms, and you know what I mean? Like, listen, I don't want to break it down too deep. I want you to just enjoy what we're watching, understand and intake what you're watching, because at the end of the day, there are problems within many African and Caribbean countries, but also problems within the diaspora. But as long as we know and identify our history, like our real, I like to call it real story, then at least we can find a solution and be active on a solution, because we can be like, oh, that worked then, so we can try and work that. Or this is why this has happened, so we need to avoid doing that. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why it's important to watch these type of things, and why these documentaries are absolutely necessary. I can't even speak now, look at me.
The lifeline of Nigeria's economy at some point, when the coal mines here were bursting at the seams, literally, producing one of the most important minerals of the day. And it's so still viable as a coal mine. You can still see, bend down and take a look. There's coal everywhere. Wow. Carbon sediments, even in the groundwater. It takes you back to 1949. Above ground was the least organized offices of the coal mining department. They ran all the affairs related to the mines. They were directed almost exclusively by the Europeans. But beneath the surface, underground, in the mines, was a totally different community, exclusively run by the Africans, and they were led by the boss man, who was the head man directing all the labor.
I shouldn't laugh, yeah, but listen, if you are, I don't know if it's a London thing, it most probably is, especially in South London. What do we call the shopkeepers? Boss man, innit? Do you know what I mean? So the fact that you mentioned local boss man, like, it just, I don't know why I thought of that. I need to, yeah, that's funny. That is funny to me. This is what I mean about language and stuff like that, and words and coins of terminology that we use. Yeah, terminology that we use, you know what I mean? Like, get me? There's nothing new under the sun, but at the end of the day, nothing new. You keep on digging further, get me? You're gonna find that we all have a lot in common. We all have a lot in common. Even if you don't think we do, we actually do. Do you see what I mean? And as soon as you realize that we all have something in common, at least we can have a common interest, a common goal, and we can work towards that. You hear me? Like, it just makes sense. But let's just pull that real quick, because I have to hear that again.
Totally different community. exclusively run by the Africans, and they were led by the boss man, who was the head man directing all the labor. Beneath him were the hewers who would cut the coal from the surface, and beneath them were the tubmen who would load the coal onto wagons that would travel all the way up to the surface. They were here for long, uninterrupted hours in confined small spaces, low on oxygen, low on morale. It became clear to them in 1949 that there was unequal pay and unequal work conditions. A conflict between the management and the miners was just a matter of time away, particularly when they knew all the extraction they were doing was for an imperial power. Out of sheer necessity and taking advantage of the new labor ordinance, the workers had formed the Colliery Workers' Union, CWU, between 1947 and 1949. Throughout much of this period, the Secretary General was Josiah Okudiliochi.
You see,
Oji had recently been dismissed from his government employment at the colliery department.
you know what's like? There's a pattern with mainstream media run by British or whatever, and the government. You know what I mean? The pattern is whenever someone, especially someone who's not of their complexion or whatever, let's just say that, they end up saying that they're I don't know if I can say this word because you know how censorship is, but you know, something that they called Nelson Mandela. In fact, I'll probably put up a screenshot of that and you'll see what I mean. So it's like at the end of the day, and now they're saying this is a scheming rogue or something like that. Like, come on, man. Just because he doesn't want to, he has a different agenda to yours. It's just wild. Like, you're gonna have differences in it. Like, it is what it is.
But devoted himself to the union's work by embarking on the difficult task of canvassing bonus rates and arrears of payment of allowances. Gradually, the workers' union began to assert themselves. They pushed for increased allowances, an underground allowance, and a per-day payment as bonus for production, particularly in light of COLA, the cost of living allowance. They demanded new boots. The union slowly became a thorn in the colliery companies behind.
Of course it would.
The demand was rejected by management.
Not surprised.
The company had shown little hesitation to use its power in the past on protesters and other troublemakers. The union resisted the temptation to strike and instead devised an effective protest method that was legal but very harmful to the company's business interests. On the 4th of November 1947, the miners secretly called a go-slow action. A go-slow was a hybrid between a strike and staying on the job. To avoid being charged with starting an illegal strike, the workers, using the secrecy of their local language, instructed each other not to down tools outright, so that technically they were not on strike. Instead, they would apply minimum effort at work at the slowest pace for the lowest possible output.
Hey, you know what? If you have ever been employed, yeah, do not lie to yourself and not admit that you have done something similar. Like, you probably are doing it right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, if you are doing it, it is what it is, isn't it? But like, Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know what I mean? That's just doing the bare minimum. That's interesting. I didn't even know like I didn't know you could strike like that. Because obviously it's gonna affect the business as a whole, innit? So if it affects the business, be like, how comes? Well, if you want us to, and that's where they hold the power. Because like, you need us. You need us to do our maximum best. But for us to do the maximum best, you have to give us this, give us that. That's, you know, it makes sense. It makes sense. Get me?
Production down to a trickle. Literally, handfuls of coal were produced instead of the usual wagons. It was effective, and the colliery company was caught totally unawares. The Go-Slow workers openly displayed no protest, no violence, no picketing, and no verbal exchanges. The colliery company could not lawfully call the police nor sanction the union leadership. The Go-Slow trick received national attention. The Lagos press urged the workers on. The management had to deal directly with Josiah Oji and the CW. I remember as a freshman in the University of Ife being told that we're all going to Iva Valley, and it's a place where palm wine drinkers, what I mean. It's a place where you go and really chill out. And even then, I still didn't know where the real Iva Valley was and what it stood for.
Yeah.
It was until I started my research that I found that this was another big moment in Nigeria's history and the making of Nigeria. Let's talk about IPOD.
The direct cause being that two of the officials, two mining officials, led by one H.B. Morapo, was one of the mining superintendent, had asked the workers to load up explosives to a carriage, which they had refused because, as far as they were concerned, this was the duty of surface level workers, not underground miners. So they refused to do this, and the long and short of it was that the police were called in. And the police superintendent, Thomason, had come and been speaking to the workers and and trying to compel them, and they're still there. They refused to budge. Eventually, reinforcements were called in. Police reinforcements were called in, led by a police officer, F.S. Phillips. Phillips lined the workers, the miners, up in a row, and lined the police officers that he came in two rows.
And so you can imagine this clearing here would have been ground zero, a place where both sides had in contention. The striking miners determined to keep the mines open, and the colliery company determined to shut down the mines. And so you can just imagine this clearing, 100 striking miners trying to hold this ground while the police were taking position. 75 armed policemen under the command of Senior Superintendent of Police, F.S. Phillips, had taken positions on a high ground in order to take the advantage of the valley. And you can just imagine them in positions very similar to this, right high up, in a position where they were looking down on the 100 striking miners. After the warning shots from the first shot, Alkebulan, Sunday Ayasalo, was shot in the face.
Wow.
He died instantly. Many more were to follow.
These people are they're not even people. These demons are fucking evil.
aftermath of this, the protests actually were launched by the citizens movement, by the NCNC, the West African Island, and even the Daily Times, with its conservative mindset, was compelled to report the fact that a human tragedy had occurred. Because
in one afternoon, about 28 people were shot.
Absolutely, I know. And the simple fact is this: the Fitzgerald inquiry, which sat to consider this matter, made recommendations. They were very, very low. They were highly critical of the conduct of the police, of Phillips, and they in fact recommended that he be dismissed.
Dismissed. More, bro.
By nightfall, news of the massacre.
Hang on. Dismissed. Not even. Yeah, dismiss is one thing, but what about the consequences? Do you see what I mean? See, if roles were reversed, the consequences would still have been the same in terms of they would have got killed. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not trying to say that Phillips Demon should have been murdered or anything. I'm not gonna even say that. Do you know what I mean? Because that's not what I've come here to say or talk about. Like, I'm not God in it. But it's like, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, there's consequences to actions, isn't it? So if you want to go do demonic stuff, alright, then you should feel the consequences of those demonic stuff. Do you know what I mean? That you've done. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, everyone has a thing or something about them that they don't like, if that makes sense. In terms of, I want to give an example, but I can't really think. But like, him losing his job, it's not a big deal to him. Do you know what I mean? Because he knows he can get something better or something else as soon as possible. Like, he knows. Even jail possible. Let's just say if going to jail or even the death penalty, like, was not what he wanted. Do you know what I mean? And it would affect his family, especially financially. Then that should be the consequence of his actions. That should be what should be done. Anyway, it's one thing talking about the past, but it's another thing trying to affect the future. Do you know what I mean? Like, what should be the solution going forward in those circumstances? Leave your answer in the comment section below. I'd like to know your suggestions. Because obviously, let's be real, there are certain things that are quite similar, but there are different. It may not be someone being actually murdered or anything, but it may be, in fact, anyway, I don't. You know what? Forget it. Yeah, just forget it. Let's keep moving.
Going around the city. Enugu city was full of demonstrations, there was tension, people were annoyed, there were protests. The protests went as far as Aba, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, and Lagos. The Iba Valley massacre was so important because it brought together for the first time the workers, the unionists, the nationalists, the agitators, and the new breed of politicians. They were united. It was the last time the government of Great Britain was going to be able to push around Nigerians. This was the turning point because from then on, it snowballed into a series of actions that led to independence talks in Lancaster House. They built a monument in memory of that event in the city center. The swinging 40s were gone. It was time for the 50s. It was the nationalists' time. The movement for participation in government and self-rule grew louder at a crucial time. We now recognize the 1950s as a watermark in the process of decolonization in Africa. As the 1950s draw to a close, the big men, the new politicians, the new breed politicians had taken control, and they were clearly going to inherit this freedom that was coming. And generally now we're faced with a dichotomy and almost a controversy. The big men who literally single-handedly founded African nations, Nigeria in particular. And these big men are now subject to hero worship. We worship them as if they single-handedly founded the country. And as 1959 elections became certain, each of these big heroes were jostling for a right to represent their people in the Federal House of Representatives right here in front of them. And behind me is the Trafalgar Square, where the independence flag would be raised for the first time. But it seemed as if Nigerians just couldn't wait to get rid of the white masters and replace them with new black masters.
Wow.
We lose the importance.
Wow. Even though I don't think that was intentional of replacing white masters with black masters, I think it was just a thing of maybe things wasn't thought out thoroughly and stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know, because I wasn't there. But I will say this. This is what I mean by knowing your history. You need to know, what happened, why that happened, how that happened. Do you know what I mean? And then trying to, if you know there's a problem there, or the problem at the moment, then what you do is, okay, well, trying to find an active solution that you can work on. That's the key thing. It's not about other people and what they can do. It's more like what you can do. You see what I'm saying? And the main thing I would suggest is basically just teaching your children. That's as simple as it's going to get. Teach them the truth, and they're going to find ways within them to find actual solutions as well. When, I don't have to explain it. Some things are just innate. You know what I mean? But yeah, let's go.
Of the social action of ordinary people and extraordinary events over time, and we replace with hero worship. One of the leading new breed of the day was the relatively young Anthony Nahuru. In 1953, Nahuru submitted the motion to the clerk of the House of Representatives, urging that the House accepts as a primary objective the attainment of self-government for Nigeria in 1956. On a day in March 1955, Robertson made his way to Whitehall, where he was told that Sir John Macpherson was retiring and His Majesty's government wanted him to take the most important job in the service. Like his previous posting in Sudan, Nigerians had caught the bug of self-rule. He also recognized the same north-south divide with religious undertones. This was not a job he could turn down. By his own observations in November 1954, it was Her Majesty's government's firm policy to preserve the unity of Nigeria in the interests of all her people. At this critical juncture, it is more than ever necessary that all British officials in the North, and especially those in positions of authority or influence, should do all in their power to discharge separatist or secessionist tendencies amongst northern Nigerians. Clearly, this was a concern for the colonial government. The new governor, James Robertson, was in no hurry. He was new in office and started with the leisurely obligatory tour of the country. In the West, he met Obafemi Awolowo, the Premier of the Western region. They had met briefly in Sudan while Awolowo was en route to India. In the North, the Northern Emirs, led by the Saudana, were in no great hurry for independence. They were strategic. The Saudana wanted to build northern capacity to fill the upper positions of the civil service before he would agree to any departure by the British.
Well, you've got to be strategic, right? You have to. You really have to be strategic. You have to. But it's like raw. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
In the meantime, Azikwe was due to leave the Eastern Region government as its premier to the scheduled constitutional conferences in London on the future arrangements of self-rule in Nigeria. On Robertson's recommendation, the Secretary of State Lennox Boyd announced the appointment of a commission and the postponement of the entire conference until the commission submitted its report.
Why is
The
his
nation
birthday
was aghast.
after my birthday? I'm on the 27th.
Finally, a new conference date was set for May 1957, to be held as far away from the political pressure of Nigeria as could be achieved in London. The venue was Lancaster House. Lancaster House was once known as Stafford House. It was an imposing hall, thought to be so grand that Queen Victoria once said to the Duchess of Sutherland, "I have come from my house to your palace." On the 23rd of May 1957, 23 substantive members arrived in their best suits and traditional outfits. The press, radio journalists, and broadcast TV were all in attendance. Secretary of State Lennox Boyd addressed the conference on behalf of the government. Robertson also addressed the gathering. The regional leaders, Ahmadu Bello, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, and Dr. Endeli, and their respective teams listened with rapt attention. I just had to come and see Lancaster House, and this is about as close as we can get. Lancaster House, because it bears such an importance to the life of the colony. Just after the war in 1948, there was an Africa conference, and the whole concept of the Commonwealth was being discussed. And then in 1953, the nationalists gathered here, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, Ahmadu Bello, Tafawa Balewa. They gathered here to discuss the unthinkable, self-rule. They came again in 1957 and 1958 to discuss the end of the colony, independence.
So hang on, before we go any further, I don't think that is the unthinkable, to be honest with you. Because think about it. If over years you've been consistently oppressed, right, and you've been marginalized, eventually in your mind, you're gonna be like, why am I? You're not even asking yourself why, but like, it's a thing of, what is the solution to this problem? You see what I mean? If they're ruling us, why can't we rule ourselves? Do you see what I mean? It's just me personally, I believe that's just a natural thought of naturally, if you're going through something, naturally you want to find a solution. And if you come to a solution where it's just self-rule or whatever, then it is what it is. The same thing like naturally in, like, how can I put it? It's like there's some people that end up working for years and years and years, like for employers. Like there's nothing wrong with it, with working for them. But then they get to a certain age and certain circumstance in their life, and they're like, hang on, do you know what I mean? Like, why can't I work for myself? Why can't I be self-employed? So they go on go on that journey. Do you know what I mean? Some people are self-employed first and then go on to employment, and then some of them go back to self-employment. Like, I'm just talking from that perspective so you can understand what I mean. Because you know, it is what it is, isn't it? Like everyone's journey is different. But I think naturally, if you care about your people, then naturally you're gonna put yourself in a position where you're like, hang on, the solution to this is just, you know what I mean? You speak amongst your people, and you're like, alright, this is the solution. Let's push this forward. You know what I mean? Same thing with that whole that protest. You know what I mean? That strike. You know what I mean? They came together and said, alright, cool. Seeing as the other type of strike is quote unquote it's illegal, let's do it this way. And then they did that way, even though there were fatal consequences. They still, you know what I mean? They never knew that there would be fatal consequences. They never knew that. But, you know, let's keep moving.
There would be general elections in 1959. It was agreed that the next government, led by a prime minister, would be a member from the party whose party likely won a majority in the House. Robertson decided that this party was the Northern People's Congress. He appointed its parliamentary leader, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, as prime minister. The new government could then choose ministers in the spirit of national inclusion from all sections and across party lines.
Wait, what? Did he appoint him? We're gonna rewind that.
There would be general elections in 1959. It was agreed that the next government, led by a prime minister, would be a member from the party whose party likely won a majority in the House. Robertson decided that this party was the Northern People's Congress.
Why did he decide? No, seriously. Why did Robertson decide? That don't make sense. That's not his call. Anyway.
He appointed its parliamentary leader, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa.
You see what I mean? To me, that just sounds like it is they're now becoming puppets. Basically, we're gonna pick your leaders. Like it reminds me of it slipped my mind now, but yeah, no, in fact, yeah, it reminds me of the book, The First 100 Million or something like that by Dan Pena, and he mentioned it in that book, but he also mentioned it in a couple of interviews where in the 80s he would team up with the CIA or the FBI. I believe it was CIA. To me, they're one and the same anyway. But like, so yeah, he teamed up with them to overthrow the Haitian government. And what he would do is he would put people in place, select a Haitian president that will work in their favor, so they can extract oil and benefit greatly from it. You see what I'm saying? Now, this is what I mean. This is like, man, I don't know what to say anymore, man. This world is tapped. Yeah.
New government could then choose ministers in the spirit of national inclusion from all sections and across party lines.
Spirit of national inclusion.
Elections. With Ghana getting independence in March 1956, the federal elections of 1959 were like no other in the history of Nigeria. The stakes were very high. The party with the most seats would be invited by the Governor General to form the government, either by a straight majority or by a coalition. With the silhouette of a cockerel on its flag, the NCNC launched a flamboyant campaign. Dr. Azikiwe eloquently used human rights and a plan for the National Social Security Scheme to present his idea for a liberal democracy with a socialist bent. NCNC proposed, just look on the ballot paper and do the right thing. The Northern People's Congress was the bastion of Northern interests, and it was proud of that fact. It ran a broad-based conservative agenda opposed to non-alignment in foreign affairs, a domestic policy of free medical treatment for women, and a West African Union. All of this was under a banner with a symbol of a hoe that depicted its reliance on agriculture as the future of Nigeria.
Okay, that's interesting.
The Action Group, with its alliance with the United Middle Belt Congress, UMBC, increased its chances of national acceptance. Its symbol was a palm tree. It ran on an agenda of free primary education, a new minimum wage, housing, and the creation of new regions in the Midwest and Calabar Ogoja Rivers and Middle Belt. The posters referred to Awolowo as the man with a plan, alongside the slogan, Vote AG. In November of 1959, Drum magazine had the confidence to claim that if Gallup were to poll the nation, Zik or Awu would appear to be the most acceptable to all Nigerians. I believe that this could be dangerous for Nigeria's future. For all I had learned of the Saldana and the Northerners, they might decide to leave the Federation, but they would not readily accept a national government of Southern. Instead, Robertson took the view that the MPC was the party that was likely to command a majority in the House. After all, it had won the most votes. He invited the parliamentary leader of the MPC, Tafawa Balewa, to Government House for discussions. I asked him to advise me whether I should ask him to form a government at once or wait a little longer until the situation clarified. Balewa responded, invite the NPC to form a government immediately. Over the next few days, a new coalition emerged. NCNC and MPC had done a deal that saw their coalition provide an outright majority. The leaders, Saldana, Balewa, and Azikwe, went to see the Governor General. The old title had been restored for Robertson specifically with the details of their power-sharing agreement. Saldana, the leader of the MPC, would remain the Premier of the North region. Azikwe would become the President of the Senate and then Governor General after independence. And Balewa would be the new Prime Minister. The Action Group would become Her Majesty's loyal opposition. Robertson was delighted.
I am still baffled to why Robertson's involvement was there in the first place. I'm baffled. So that just goes to show you, even back then, they're letting you know, you think you're gonna be ruling independently? Oh hell no. We're gonna throw a spanner in the works and give you the illusion that you're getting that independent and self-rule. That's what I've taken away from it. Like, I could be completely wrong, and I don't mind about being wrong, because it's all about education, and if you can educate me and give me the right information, then cool. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to give you misinformation, but I can only go based on what I know of and how I interpret things, and that's how I've interpreted that. Do you see what I mean? Like, how have you interpreted that? Like, leave your answer in the comment section below. We're gonna rehash that just now. So Robertson put, I'm forgetting names for now, innit? But I'm just gonna say whatever. I'm gonna say Robertson put so and so together. Like, he basically formed the government. Basically, he's the one who said, "Alright, boom, you do this, you do that." Do you see what I'm saying? And formed the government immediately. Like, why is he involved? Like, anyway, what would you do? Me, if I know Robinson was involved, I'm saying, listen, we're gonna redo everything, yeah. And anyone who has connection with Robinson, their votes or their whatever is invalid. Do you know what I mean? It's invalid, and they should be banished, yeah, from the country. They should be banished permanently, them and their family. Yeah, you heard, right? Yeah. Because, yeah, obviously that seems a bit harsh to say them and their family, but, hey, and banish, obviously, Robinson. Because you can't have you have to tie the loose ends, innit? But anyway, That's just me being a little bit irate and a bit. That was sort of an emotional reaction. I won't lie. I could be reacting based on logic. So let me get back on that mode.
1960 was Africa's year, and this was Nigeria's turn. From the ashes of slave trade, the sun was rising in a new horizon. The servant would finally become the master. Richards went on to eulogize Tafawa Balewa as the greatest statesman that Africa had ever produced.
Really?
Modest Balewa was less effusive. He had ominously repeated to many of his friends, "Don't expect too much of us. I know the world is watching us, and what worries me most is that everyone expects too much from us." This was to be a new breed show. There was no place for anybody but the new breed. No place for Kosoko and his Lagosian army. No place for Atahiru the Great and the Fulani horsemen. No place for the likes of Wanyerua and the so-called intelligent free. No place for the great pressmen of old. No place for Alimoto Elura's women. No place for Michael Imodu and his bitter enders. No place for Fulani Ransom Kuti's women. No place for the Eva Valley miners. No place for the countless, uncounted Nigerians, many of whom had lost lives and livelihood to bring about this moment to the people. It all seemed so smooth and ordered. What was the attitude of Nigerians towards the British? Okay, there was this independence. But was there resentment? Was there friendliness? Was there goodwilliness?
In a way, we were lucky that we got our independence compared with other African countries. We got our independence on a platter of gold. Yes. Yes, we didn't have to fight.
Really?
Yes, we didn't have to kill anybody. No. Some people were imprisoned, the whole process. Yes. But it was, when you compare it with what happened in other countries, I think we were lucky.
What would have become of this place if this journey hadn't started over 600 years ago, when the sea brought strangers to this land? We must single out this vast ocean, the second largest in the world, the Atlantic Ocean. It was such a huge influence in the making of Nigeria. The Atlantic carried the turning point in the journey of this colony. It carried the strangers that came first as curious traders, after so-called explorers, and then dubious liberators and would-be partners in the nation building. And now the Atlantic protects us and binds us together. This journey has taught us new things about old stories, and old stories in new ways. It has shown us that the colony experience was not a pleasant, harmless experience. It was a bitter struggle to maintain a way of life and an independence. An experience that lost people their language, their history, and their culture. We should also learn that extraordinary people are made out of ordinary people. We should celebrate the heroic things that they have done. They should no longer be irrelevant by history. And we can only enjoy the promise that our future is greater than our past if we protect our history and unearth our history.
True.
And never let it be forgotten. One thing is for certain, this African journey continues.
So I'm guessing you're going to do the rest. The conquered always imitates the conquerors. Oh. That's actually, wow, interesting. Wow. The conquered always imitates the conquered. That raw. That's actually deep. But I guess that only happens if they are not taught their true history and stuff like that. That's the way I can break that down. Because if you're taught your true history and your true culture and tradition, you're gonna be focused on living that lifestyle rather than following the conquered, or I mean following the conqueror's way. We can't, I don't know, but yeah, that was an interesting docu-series. I do hope he actually does for other African countries, and also include Caribbean countries as well. Like it'd be interesting to know, you know, certain things about certain things. So yeah, other than that, listen, I want to thank you for watching. If you made it this far, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification. In the comment section below, hashtag Alkebulantrust is not Alkebulantrust. Hashtag Alkebulan is great again. You know what I mean? Because we're gonna speak into existence. We're gonna work into existence. You know what I mean? But yeah, listen, this was very interesting. I do hope to learn more from other African countries, other Caribbean countries. But the other thing I want to do is, well, I may do more reaction videos to some documentaries as well. Like I think that's very interesting, but because me personally, I'm learning more. There's some things I know, there's some things I don't know. There's some things I need to, you know, jog my memory on. But this was a great watch. But like I said, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, because you never know the video you suggest that could be next.